This is Kevin from Walker Wealth Management. And Kevin, you're going to tell us about retirement planning and what can you offer and whom you help with your retirement.
Sure. Retirement planning is such a broad area, but I really want to talk about my approach is more of a holistic approach.
Okay.
So I get a lot of times I'll have clients, new clients, you come in and they just, here's my statements. What do I do? And before I even look at a statement, I talk about like the investment period. There's 3 things I really focus on in our first appointment, and the first one is life insurance. Do we have life insurance? Do we have catastrophic coverage for clients? And one of the things that's most overlooked, I know that you're probably helping out a lot of life insurance people. I have my own life insurance license, but you need to make sure that something happens to you, happens to your spouse, something horrible, that you're taken care of. So life insurance is first thing we talk about. Second thing we talk about is estate plan. And I'm not an estate planning attorney, but I want to make sure that you have your wills and your power of attorneys set in place.
All right.
One of the worst things ever to happen is if your spouse becomes incapacitated and you don't have that in place, well, then you become their guardian. And it's one of the worst things in the world to be. It sounds great. You are the guardian, right?
Yeah,
but it's
bad.
It is. It's because most people's majority of their money is either in their house or in their retirement plan. And if your spouse's majority of their money is in their retirement plan and you don't have power of attorney, then you've got to go to court every time you need to have money withdrawn from it. So I had one of my first clients I inherited. I had that happen to them, and every time they needed something. Now you can make a budget, but every year or every 2 years you got to go in and you got to to the penny show where you spent the money.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah. And if the furnace goes in the middle of the winter and hey, I need $5,000, that's fine, but you got to go to court.
You really have to go to court every time.
You got to go to court. So you can plan. You can do a budget. Say, hey, we think we're going to spend.
But like you say, if there's something that comes up and you need the money,
you got to run to court to get it. So you don't.
Are you literally going before a judge, or what's?
Yeah, I'm not. I've never had to do it.
Okay, I'm just curious.
But I'm sure. Hopefully, they have a smoother way to do it. But no, it's a court document.
Point being, it's a good idea to have that all in a
power of
will
attorney,
power of attorney,
financial and healthcare. So the will, then powers of attorneys, kind of a minimum. And I tell my clients they don't have to have it done prior to being my client, but if they become my client, I guarantee you every meeting I'm going to ask you, is your will and power of attorney is done?
Do you have people you can work with to help them do that if they need it?
I have people that I can recommend.
Okay.
And I usually recommend a few people, but there's a lot of great estate planning attorneys out there.
Yeah.
But just like any other field, there's some not great ones too.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So the last thing was two.
Okay,
two
that's
out of
right.
three.
That's right.
Sorry.
You mentioned there's a third.
Right. The third point
Getting ahead of myself.
is cash and debt. So, do we have good debt? Do we have bad debt? Do we have cash on hand? Because, if you've got a lot of bad debt, like credit card debt, of course, is bad debt, and credit card rates right now are insane. 25, 30%.
Yeah, they are.
So, if you owe $10,000 on your credit card, why would I have you bring me $10,000 to invest? Because I can't guarantee you a 30% return, right? So it's important that we work to get those things in line. And then cash is also extremely important, the emergency fund, because anything I invest, I want to invest for long term, 5+ years. So I want to make sure that you have money on hand in case the furnace goes or something.
Going back to the furnace.
Yeah. And that you have money to do that, because I don't want to. It always seems when things go wrong, like everything's going wrong, right? So if you all of a sudden you need a big chunk of money, like you lost your job and you need a big chunk of money. Well, if you lost your job, probably a lot of other people have lost their job and means the economy's bad. Well, if the economy's bad, a lot of time that means the market's down.
And you're taking money out.
And you're taking money out when the market's down, right?
That's a good point. Yeah.
So we always try to make sure those 3 cornerstones are in place before we even start talking about retirement.
For folks who may be watching, what are examples of good debt? When you talk about good debt, bad debt.
Sure. There's house. Your home, that's considered good debt. I know interest rates are a lot higher than they were a few years ago, but still considered good debt because you're making, hopefully it appreciates, but you're making payments and you're going to get ahead of it.
Yeah.
And eventually one day, that's a healthy thing. So that's good. There can be, college debt can be considered good because you're taking some money out to improve yourself. think Warren Buffett, talked about how, taking a loan to go to college, make sure that you are paying yourself, and that going to college is one of the best ways to do it.
Yeah.
So education. But besides that, we're kind of limiting, that. But a car loan can be considered a good bet. Although buying a new car, hopefully you can hold it for
these days too. I'll tell you,
7-8 years. If you're there's an interesting fact about something where they talk about if you're going to lease versus buy. And so if you're going to buy, you want to be able to make sure you use that car for 6-7 years. Yeah. If you're going to be switching out every 3 years, well, then maybe leasing makes more sense.
Right.
But anyway, yeah.
I'm curious. So, what is there a particular age that people should start thinking about retirement planning? Do you notice when people first, come to you?
Yeah.
Where are they in their life?
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of different scenarios. Earlier is better, right? The old rule. It's about having time in the market, not timing the market. Yeah. So the longer you can invest for, the better off you'll be. So. I really wish they would talk about retirement planning in high school, because I really think, that really sets kids up to start thinking about when they get that first job. When I went to high school and when I college, they didn't talk about retirement planning at all. Right. Whatever.
No,
right. But it's
far off.
Talk about good debt, bad debt, everything like that.
Yeah.
Because most people, when they get themselves in trouble, it's in their early 20s, and they might got their first job or they're at the college and, someone's handing out credit card applications. Like, okay, great, right?
It's easy.
But earlier the better. But, a lot of time I start getting people talking to me, 30s, 40s. But then I get a lot of people talking to me in their 50s. The 50s, it's all of a sudden, hey, our statements matter now because retirement's real. Retirement doesn't seem real if it's, 20 years away.
I know.
Right? But when it's like 8 years away, and if we're going through a bad market, it's like, oh my gosh, what do I do? And, the most important thing is not to panic, right? Is, typically speaking on those type of clients, they've had a few jobs, they've got 401ks here, there, everywhere, and so at that time, sometimes it makes more sense to start consolidating them into IRAs.
Okay, so that's an interesting answer. Sometimes folks are there. They maybe do have the means and stuff, but they're all over the place. They're like, all right, I got to figure out my plan heading into retirement.
Yeah, yeah. So it's
Hey, can I say something else? Because
Yeah.
I know you mentioned the importance of having you make sure people have stuff like their life insurance and estate plan, all that.
Mm-hmm.
I will say younger kids, younger, I might say 20s or even 30s.
Right.
A lot of them might not have a will.
Mm-hmm.
And so, do you feel for them, even if they're, let's say they're not married yet or anything like that?
Yeah.
Is it still important that they have that stuff in place?
So, for life insurance, the simple thing is, if they're working, which hopefully they are.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I don't know when they're talking to me. First job is go to the job,
yeah,
right. But a lot of times you'll have life insurance through work.
Yeah.
Right. And if you don't have a spouse or anything like that or kids, you don't need life insurance. But you could be 28-year-old guy and think you're immortal, but that 20-year-old single guy could also still have 2 kids.
Yeah.
And what are you going to do if something happens to you? And so at that point it is important. So yeah, as soon as you get married, it's good to have life insurance. And then especially if you start buying bigger and bigger houses, because all of a sudden you're combining income.
Right.
And then you can look at we can buy a $400,000 house.
You can, but
you can, right? Just can and should, right? Two different terms.
That's right.
But then it's important to make sure that you have enough life insurance that your spouse has options when you pass, or get called home. So it's options, but they're not better off, if that makes sense. You never want your spouse to be, wow, I'd be a lot better off if Kevin didn't make it home today, So it's you gotta
be careful.
You gotta juggle that number, but yeah. So they don't have it. It's just different as you get older. 30s, you need a lot of life insurance, right? But that's also why we talk about life insurance. I recommend typically term life insurance versus permanent.
Why is that? What's your theory?
Let's bang for buck, right? Because why are we buying insurance? Typically speaking, we're buying our insurance in 20s and 30s is because we want to protect against a catastrophic loss, our loss of life, and protect our family. Yeah. So we want the most insurance for the least amount, all right? And sometimes you get pushed back on that because, Clients hate putting money into something that they won't get money out of.
Right.
Right. But the idea is like you're 25 years old. Let's say you're married, you have a kid. Buy the biggest life insurance policy you can't afford. We can figure out what you need.
Yeah.
Because as you age, you're probably not going to have just one kid. You're probably going to have 2 kids or 3 kids. All right. And your expenses right now are probably going to get higher. You'll get promoted. You'll get a better job. You'll buy a bigger house. And all of a sudden you'll have more things that are going to be costly. But life insurance won't be any cheaper ever than when you're 25, right? Right. So when you're 35, 45, you're closer to that age of passing, and so the insurance gets more expensive as you get older. And the other thing then is versus permanent insurance is that, so let's say this you get a $500,000 policy, and it's $2,000 a year. Well, a $500,000 permanent policy, which means that never expires. That might be $7,000-8,000 a year. Well, if you would buy the term, invest the difference over those 30 years and get like a 7-8% return, you might have that $500,000 or close to it.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And so the idea is that once you want your insurance, I know it's a really long segment, but you really want your insurance to kind of fade away once you are at retirement age. Because if you're 55 to 65 and all of a sudden you've saved $1 million, well, do you need a $500,000 death benefit? If everything goes correctly, your house is paid off, kids are in college, you've got your big retirement pool, and why do you need life insurance? The only time you need life insurance at that point is wealth transfer. If we're trying to transfer wealth tax efficiently because we think we're going to have $8 to $10 million of estate to transfer. But there's still, you talk to a estate planning attorney, they can figure out a way to transfer that better.
There's all sorts of tricks for that, isn't there?
So we're really started talking about really, really high net worth individuals that might need permanent insurance. But initially it's term. There can be certain situations where a permanent policy might make sense, but the vast majority of the time it's term. Don't pay for something you're not gonna need. All right, because it's like for us, we remember the TV VCR combos, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
And what was great about it is that you'd either have a big VCR and with a TV that doesn't work, or you have a big TV with a VCR doesn't work, right? And that's why I think of permanent policies is that it's just extra stuff that it's not trim. You can't. It's not very mobile.
I like the perspective. It's pretty nice. So,
yeah.
But again, no matter where somebody is in their life, younger, older, whatever. You're able to help them with the retirement wherever they are.
Yeah,
today.
and honestly, a lot of times, I had a guy call me today, a referral actually, and he sold a house and he's got a lot of cash sitting on the sidelines, but he wants to buy investment properties, and he asked me, should he invest with me? And then when something comes up, and I said no, because I'm long term, right? So what's going to happen is if all of a sudden housing prices go down, and you think it's a good time to buy, well, if housing prices go down, that means the economy is not doing well, which means your investments have lost money, most likely, right? So a lot of times, just give me a call and we'll chit chat, and I don't mind giving, kind of guidance for you, not advice per se, but I can say, hey, it would make sense to talk to me if XYZ happens, or so on and so forth.
And is this a way that, if somebody's interested in talking and just finding out more, usually you have a conversation with the folks to see if there's a good match between what they need and what you can bring them?
Yeah, absolutely. And worst case scenario is you lose 15 minutes of your life, and But
if you have a life insurance, that's okay.
Right.
Okay, no problem.
Right.
Kevin, thanks a lot.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
it.
You're welcome.